Day 20. Today's reading is from the book Luke chapter 1 verse 6 to 8 and 11 to 17. Zechariah and Elizabeth were righteous in God's eyes, careful to obey all the Lord's commandments and regulations. They had no children because Elizabeth was unable to conceive, and they were both very old. One day, Zechariah was serving God in the temple, for his order was on duty that week. While Zechariah was in the sanctuary, an angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing to the right of the incense altar. Zechariah was shaken and overwhelmed with fear when he saw him. But the angel said, "Don't be afraid, Zechariah. God has heard your prayer. Your wife, Elizabeth, will give you a son, and you are to name him John. You will have great joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth, for he will be great in the eyes of the Lord. He must never touch wine or other alcoholic drinks. He will be filled with the Holy Spirit even before his birth, and he will turn many Israelites to the Lord their God. He will be a man with the spirit and power of Elijah. He will prepare the people for the coming of the Lord." Now was the time when all the miracles began. After speaking to prophets like Habakkuk and Malachi, God fell quiet for a very, very long time. For 400 long years, God's children looked up to heaven and could have heard a pin drop. It had been 500 years since anybody had seen angels. It had been 600 years since Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego walked through the flames with a fourth blazing angel from heaven. But then, all of a sudden, it was like hundreds of quiet years shattered, and God's voice reverberated loud in hearts. There he was. An angel appeared in front of one old man, a certain wrinkled and graying priest named Zechariah. A priest who was shocked that his name had been drawn to offer the incense in the holiest place in the temple. It was a special day that came only once a year, the Day of Atonement, the day when people celebrated being made right with God. Throughout a priest's whole life, his name might never be drawn to go into the holiest place, and once it was drawn, it could never be drawn again. This was Zechariah's big day. Zechariah's name means God remembers. But some days Zechariah felt like God had forgotten him. Everybody else had the gift of a child, but not Zechariah. Zechariah had no little boy of his own to play with, to love on, to dream with. Zechariah did have a wife. Her name was Elizabeth. It meant God's promise. Elizabeth prayed with Zechariah that God would remember, that he would remember his promise of a child. What more could anyone want than the miraculous gift of a child? Zechariah and Elizabeth prayed to believe that God remembered, that God kept his promises. This is always the best place for miracles to happen. God meets us right in the place where it's hard to believe, when our believing sort of runs out. God's loving always runs on. Nothing is impossible with God. This is what the angel declared. Zechariah, meaning God remembers, and his wife, Elizabeth, meaning God's promise, would give birth to a baby boy who would be named John, which means God is gracious. That's the miracle that we all get. God gives us grace. He graciously gives us one gift after another. He gives us breath and life and each other, and He gives us all of Himself. The angel told Zechariah, who could hardly believe it, "Your boy, John, will be a man with the spirit and power of Elijah." Remember Elijah and the fireballs that fell straight from heaven? The time of miracles was here. This is what the angel said. John will help people get their hearts ready for the coming of the greatest gift ever. That's really all we have to get ready for Christmas. Our hearts. We need to get our hearts ready to welcome Jesus into every part of our lives. And guess how you best get your heart ready for Jesus? Come to Him just as you are. It's like your name has been drawn and you get the miracle of Christmas. You get more than just proof that God exists. You get the gift of really knowing God's presence. You always get the greatest Christmas miracle. You get God with you. God gives Himself as the greatest gift, and He doesn't keep any truly good thing from you, because the greatest things aren't ever things. God never ever withholds the greatest gift from you. Jesus is all good, and He is all yours, and this is always your miracle, your greatest gift. And the best thing is that you can always have as much of Jesus as you want. Can you feel the miracles beginning already?